The birth of a thinker. Bertrand Arthur William Russell was born on May 18, 1872, in Trelech, Wales, into one of Britain's most distinguished aristocratic families. His parents, Lord and Lady Amberley, were progressive thinkers who believed in freedom of thought and social reform. However, tragedy struck early. By the time Bertrand was 6, both his parents had died, leaving him in the care of his strict grandmother, Lady Russell. Though religious and conservative, she instilled in him a sense of duty, compassion, and the value of intellect. Living in Pembroke Lodge, surrounded by silence and books, young Bertrand found solace in mathematics and logic. Yet, he also suffered from loneliness and depression, questioning the meaning of life even as a child. Those early years planted the seeds of his lifelong search for truth, reason, and peace. From the sorrow of his childhood emerged a brilliant mind destined to challenge the moral and intellectual foundations of the 20th century. The education of a philosopher. Russell's education was as strict as it was enlightening. Tutored privately at home, he grew into a curious and disciplined student. By 16, his passion for mathematics and philosophy had taken hold. His brother Frank introduced him to Euclid's Elements, and the clarity of geometry thrilled him. It was, he said, as dazzling as first love. In 1890, Russell entered Trinity College, Cambridge, where his intellect flourished. Under the influence of Alfred North Whitehead and other leading thinkers, he mastered mathematics, logic, and moral philosophy. At Cambridge, Russell also joined the Secretive Cambridge Apostles, a society of intellectuals who debated ethics, politics, and religion. By his early 20s, Russell's mind had already turned toward a grand mission: to uncover the logical foundations of mathematics and truth itself. He rejected dogma and sought certainty through reason. This period marked the beginning of his lifelong struggle between science and human emotion, reason and morality, intellect and love, a struggle that would define both his works and his life. The birth of logic and love. In 1894, Bertrand Russell married Alice Pearsall Smith, an American Quaker and social reformer. Their union symbolized intellect and idealism, but it would later reveal the emotional conflicts within him. During this time, Russell began his groundbreaking work in mathematical logic. His fascination with combining mathematics and philosophy led to Principles of Mathematics, 1903, and later Principia Mathematica, 1910 to 1913, co-authored with Whitehead. This monumental work attempted to show that all mathematics could be derived from logical principles. Russell's ideas revolutionized modern philosophy, shaping what became known as analytic philosophy. Yet, while his mind soared to abstract heights, his heart grew distant from Alice. The marriage deteriorated, as Russell found himself torn between reason and feeling. His relentless pursuit of truth brought him fame and intellectual respect, but also loneliness. Even in his early success, Russell sensed that logic could explain the universe, but not the human soul. That realization would guide him toward new questions about love, ethics, and the purpose of life. The crisis of belief. Russell's intellectual journey led him to challenge not only mathematics, but also religion, morality, and politics. Raised in a household of religious tradition, he soon turned to skepticism. By his 30s, he had declared himself an agnostic, doubting divine authority and questioning traditional moral systems. His essays and lectures criticized the blind faith of organized religion and the injustices of imperialism. He argued that reason, not dogma, should guide human life. His famous essay, Why I Am Not a Christian, 1927, would later make him both celebrated and controversial. But the early 1900s were also a time of personal transformation. Russell's marriage ended, and he became more involved in social reform movements. He met the writer and activist Dora Black, who shared his progressive ideals. Their intellectual and emotional bond reignited his belief in human freedom, not as a philosopher's abstraction, but as a living principle. From this inner conflict between logic and compassion emerged the mature Russell, a philosopher who sought to apply reason to the real problems of society. The War and the Pacifist. When World War I erupted in 1914, Russell took a courageous stand against it. He viewed the war as a tragic failure of reason, a descent into chaos driven by nationalism and greed. While many intellectuals supported Britain's involvement, Russell refused. He became one of the country's leading pacifists, speaking out against the war and condemning conscription. His lectures and writings led to public outrage and, eventually, severe punishment. In 1916, he was dismissed from Trinity College for his anti-war activities. 2 years later, he was fined and imprisoned for 6 months for publishing pacifist literature. But even in prison, Russell continued to write, producing Introduction to Mathematical Philosophy, 1919. His imprisonment did not weaken him. It strengthened his belief that moral courage was the highest form of intelligence. The war changed Russell forever. He saw how knowledge, when separated from conscience, could destroy humanity. From that point on, he dedicated his voice to the cause of peace, freedom, and human reason. The years of renewal. After the war, Russell emerged from prison with renewed energy and purpose. He traveled, lectured, and continued to challenge conventions. His partnership with Dora Black blossomed into marriage in 1921, and together they founded a progressive school in Sussex based on freedom and creativity rather than rigid discipline. This period marked Russell's transformation from a philosopher of logic to a philosopher of life. His books, such as The Problems of Philosophy and Marriage and Morals, explore the human condition, love, sex, morality, and happiness with honesty and clarity. He became both a scholar and a social reformer, advocating for women's rights, education, and rational ethics. Yet, his unconventional ideas often clashed with conservative society. His writings were banned in some places, and he lost teaching positions due to his controversial opinions. Still, Russell thrived on conflict. His intellect burned brighter when challenged, and his mission remained the same: to liberate the human mind from ignorance and fear. The philosopher of humanity. In the 1930s, the world drifted again toward violence and tyranny. Russell, horrified by the rise of fascism and Stalinism, spoke out for democracy and freedom of thought. His faith in rational progress was tested, but not broken. He spent much of the decade traveling and lecturing across the world, including the United States and China. His time in China with Dora opened his eyes to new philosophies, especially Confucian ideas of harmony and morality. Yet, their relationship began to crumble under the strain of differing ideals and infidelities. During this time, Russell also began to write for a broader audience. His works like A History of Western Philosophy, 1945, became accessible masterpieces, blending wit, clarity, and deep scholarship. The book made him one of the most recognized philosophers in the world. Even as personal challenges mounted, Russell's pen remained his weapon, one that he used not only to explain ideas, but to inspire humanity to think critically and live ethically. War once more. When World War II broke out, Russell's pacifism was again tested. Unlike the First World War, he saw Hitler's regime as an evil that had to be stopped. This moral evolution showed the complexity of his thinking. He was not blindly idealistic, but deeply rational. During the war, Russell returned to Cambridge and focused on teaching and writing. His views on morality and science matured, emphasizing the need for ethical reasoning in a world capable of destruction. By the end of the war, he had become one of the few intellectuals who could balance reason with compassion, realism with idealism. He continued to write prolifically, publishing Human Knowledge, Its Scope and Limits, 1948, exploring how humans could know truth in an uncertain world. The war left him convinced that peace was fragile and that ignorance was humanity's greatest enemy. From then on, he devoted his old age to ensuring that reason, not hatred, would guide the fate of civilization. The Nobel Philosopher. In 1950, Bertrand Russell received the Nobel Prize in Literature, not for fiction or poetry, but for his varied and significant writings in which he champions humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. It was a recognition of a lifetime spent defending truth and intellect against the forces of oppression and ignorance. Russell, ever humble, said he valued the prize as a tribute to rational inquiry and moral courage. Now in his late 70s, Russell had become a global symbol of wisdom and conscience. His public lectures, essays, and television appearances reached millions. He spoke with calm authority on love, knowledge, and the dangers of dogmatism. But the philosopher remained restless. The world had changed, yet wars and injustice continued. He saw new dangers: nuclear weapons, political corruption, and moral decay. Russell's mission was not over. The old man of reason would soon become the loudest voice against the greatest threat humanity had ever faced: the fighter for peace. The 1950s and 1960s saw Russell transform into a global activist. Horrified by the development of nuclear weapons, he joined scientists like Albert Einstein to form the Pugwash movement, dedicated to preventing nuclear war. In 1955, he co-authored the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, warning the world about the catastrophic consequences of atomic conflict. It called for peace through dialogue, not destruction. Russell became the moral conscience of the modern age, leading protests, writing open letters, and speaking fearlessly against superpowers. His involvement in the Ban the Bomb campaign and his leadership of the Committee of 100 made him a symbol of intellectual resistance. Even when arrested in 1961 at age 89 for civil disobedience, he remained defiant, saying, "I am willing to be judged by history." Through his courage, he reminded humanity that philosophy was not only about thought. It was about action, responsibility, and the duty to protect life, love, family, and complexity. Behind the public image of a philosopher was a man of great emotional complexity. Russell married 4 times and had children who admired, yet sometimes struggled to understand him. His relationships reflected his belief in freedom and individuality, but they also revealed his human flaws: impatience, restlessness, and emotional detachment. His third wife, Patricia Spence, and his fourth, Edith Finch, each played important roles in his later life. Edith, especially, gave him companionship and calm in his old age. Russell was also a loving grandfather, particularly to his grandson, Conrad, who would later become a historian. Despite his fame, he never lost touch with the simple joys of conversation, laughter, and curiosity. He often said that 3 passions had governed his life: the longing for love, the search for knowledge, and unbearable pity for the suffering of mankind. These words captured the essence of his humanity, a blend of intellect and empathy that defined his life's purpose. The final years. In his final decade, Russell remained intellectually active, writing letters, giving interviews, and championing global peace. He condemned the Vietnam War, apartheid, and political hypocrisy. Even in his 90s, he worked tirelessly through the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation, which promoted nuclear disarmament and social justice. Physically frail but mentally sharp, he continued to question the moral failures of world leaders. His writings, such as the Autobiography of Bertrand Russell, offered not only reflections on his life, but lessons on courage, doubt, and wisdom. He often said that humanity's survival depended not on faith or power, but on reason and compassion. Russell passed away peacefully on February 2nd, 1970, at the age of 97 in Wales. He left behind an intellectual legacy that spanned mathematics, philosophy, and human rights. A life lived in relentless pursuit of truth and peace. The legacy of reason. Bertrand Russell's influence endures across philosophy, science, and political thought. His logical theories laid the foundation for modern analytic philosophy and even influenced computer science and artificial intelligence. His social and ethical writings inspired generations to think freely, doubt wisely, and act compassionately. Russell taught that intelligence without empathy is dangerous, and that the highest form of wisdom is kindness guided by reason. His courage in speaking truth to power made him one of the greatest moral voices of the 20th century. From his lonely childhood to his global fame, Russell's journey showed that even one mind, guided by clarity, logic, and love, can illuminate an entire century. As he once wrote, "The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge." And that, perhaps, is the truest summary of Bertrand Russell's remarkable life. A philosopher who never stopped believing in the power of thought to make the world a better place.